Welcome, Stuart here, Unrepentant Atheist. Thank you for tuning in. It's 11 o'clock GMT, 2300 hours GMT, to put it another way. And this evening, I'm going to be, among other things, reviewing The Line, which Matt and Owen did last night. And some interesting calls there were. I'm going to be covering some of them. In addition to that, I'm going to be talking about something which last week I just plain forgot. I've been watching some of the TED Talks on conspiracy theories and conspiracy theorists and how to address them and how to talk to them. So I've got it written down here. I'll try not forget it again. I've been to another church service. Something interesting cropped up there. I've got something to talk about with that. And what else? Let's have a look. Well, I think that's about it, more or less. Oh, yes, just another thing. Switching the burden of proof. Yeah, I'm going to be talking about that because not only did it happen in one of the calls that came in, but also somebody's been leaving messages on my YouTube channel, effectively trying to switch the burden of proof. So I'm going to be talking about that. First of all, the calls. So let's have a look. Just in no particular order here. So Tony called in, a deconstructing theist, saying that somehow without belief in God or without there being a God, life lacks purpose. I think that for people who have probably been out of religion for a long time, they may have felt like that initially, but they soon got over it. And I don't know of any people who disbelieve that think life lacks purpose. But I can imagine that if I knew people who were in the process of deconverting and switching to, I don't know, a non-theist worldview, that they might at first start to think that life lacks purpose. And I can completely relate to that because if you believe that there is a supreme master and creator out there who created the universe just so that we miserable, destructive human beings could exist on this planet, then I could see how suddenly that big daddy up there disappearing, realizing that there's no big daddy up there anymore, how life could seem to lack purpose. In a way, it would be a bit like if you had a real father, which, let's face it, we all have had, but we've all had the misfortune of we will all have the misfortune of losing our fathers, I suppose, unless we die before them. But if you were in a family and you suddenly lost your father, you might feel a bit lost and purposeless for a while, and then obviously you would start to find that life does have purpose. You would start to imbue your life with purpose and maybe see purpose and meaning where you previously didn't see it because you had your God spectacles on. So, yeah, I think it's a matter of time for people who are deconstructing. In time, they will start to see the purpose and meaning in life that we atheists see every day. We see all around us. For me, every single living, breathing moment is pregnant with purpose and meaning, and every single moment is an end in itself, and not not the means, or not the path to some goal, which for obviously Christians would be eternal life. The real meaning is there. The real meaning is in preparing for the journey into the eternal life in heaven with Jesus Christ. So absolutely, I can see how when Christians deconvert, suddenly they feel a bit lost because they find themselves in the real world, in a world where a God doesn't exist. And then you've got this scary task of living life generating or finding purpose for yourself without it all being laid out before you. Because that's why Christianity is so popular and why Islam is so popular is because life is all laid out on a plate. You don't have to do anything except obey the laws which are written in a book, and it's all there. And as long as you do that and love Allah or love Jesus, you're all set up. You're all set up for eternity. And I don't find being an atheist in that sense particularly hard or difficult. I don't find it difficult at all, not having um, not having it all laid out before me. Because actually, if you think about it, life is already laid out before you. Life. I think is less difficult than people make it. I think that we make life more difficult. We make a big deal out of life, a bigger deal out of life than we should. But of course, with Jesus behind you and with Allah guiding you, you're going to have a completely different kind of life experience. You're going to have a life experience where you're forever going to be a child and you're never going to grow up. So, no, I'll take a non theistic worldview any day. Okay, right, Steve. Yeah, I think I watched the Matt debate with Andrew Wilson. I think, isn't that the one that didn't last long? I think it lasted maybe 20 minutes because Matt walked out. I don't want to get into that. I did a video on that. Well, no, there's no sort of atheist manifesto, and no, we don't have to obey Stalin and Mao. I mean, why should we have to? They're not. I mean, they're not like atheist gods or anything like that any more than Richard Dawkins is an atheist god or no. So we don't have to. We don't have to obey anybody. That's the truth of it. And it's like Dostoevsky said: if there's no God, then everything is permissible. And absolutely, everything is permissible. Yeah, absolutely. Everything. There's no God stopping me from going out and rampaging and killing. But I'll tell you what, society would have something to say about it. That's why we've got laws. And if I go out and kill, then obviously, I suppose I'll have to forfeit my freedom, and I'd rather not forfeit my freedom. Thankfully, I don't have any urge to kill, so I don't know. Not because I've been touched by the Holy Spirit, not for that reason, for other reasons. Okay, so yeah, let's just move on. Yeah, so I was talking about so that was that call. Tony, yeah, saying that he lacks purpose now that he's deconstructing. Right. David called in at the last, I think he was the last caller, and he was saying that, yeah. So he was arguing that, okay, he's an atheist, and he was arguing that there is life after death, and he could kind of prove it. And he was saying that the experience of being dead would be the same as the experience before you were alive. Of course, before you were alive, there was nothing of you to experience anything. So that's a bit strange. But I take his point that there's non existence before and there's non existence after. But as Matt asked him, is this me? Is this life after death me experiencing something? And he said, well, yes, but it's not, is it? Because we experience nothing before we're born and we experience nothing after we're dead. Obviously, assuming a materialist um, end to existence and that there's no real afterlife, like there's no heaven or anything like that. Okay, let me see. Yeah. So anyway, then he started. Yeah. Okay. So he realized that wasn't going to work, and he said, "Well, maybe the universe is cyclical, and this will all happen again. So we'll be kind of like reincarnated." And well, is reincarnation? This is just another. This is just positing something else, just something fanciful for which there's no evidence and just pure speculation. So, what to say about it? That didn't really work. Right. So the big call though was Christian, who he called in, and he was asking the hosts, you know, what, uh, why don't you believe? And aren't there some reasons that could make you believe? And Matt and Owen both said, well, no, we've found nothing that makes us believe, etc. And Matt asked, what reasons have we missed? The caller seemed to be implying that there are maybe some reasons out there for believing in God that atheists have missed. And Matt said, well, which reasons are you talking about? And the caller said, well, I don't know. It depends on, he said he's done a lot of reading. It depends on what Matt's been exposed to. Can you imagine that? He said that to Matt. And Matt's probably considered more theist arguments than any other counter apologist on the planet, probably. Possibly. He's taken hundreds or thousands of calls. So it's a bit bizarre that somebody would call in saying that there's maybe something out there that you don't know about. Well, of course, there would be, because there are dozens and hundreds of Christian apologists writing and using variations on various arguments. And Matt hasn't read every single one of them. I suppose there might be one there that Matt doesn't know about, which is like the silver bullet for theists. And the only thing you could say about that is that so far, for all the arguments that Matt's encountered, he hasn't found one that convinces him that God exists. For those arguments that haven't been presented to him, he hasn't yet got a position, and that's all that any of us could really say. So, and then he came around to switching the burden of proof. He says, well, atheism is typically defined as the claim that there is no God. And Matt and Owen both said, well, no, that's not what we are. And that is not typically what it is. It's more not subscribing to the claim that there is a God, which is a different thing. So there was a little bit of a conversation on switching the burden of proof. Matt doesn't do it. Neither does Owen. And I don't do it either, because, well, first of all, I don't claim that definitively there is no God. I think it's I mean, my level of confidence that there is no God is like sort of maybe 99%. It's very high level of confidence that there is no God, but I could be wrong. And I suppose that 1% is not a figure which, I think what I'm expressing is, I think it's highly unlikely that there is a God. So I say 1% that there is a God, 99% that there isn't. But there are some atheists who say there is no God. And for those atheists that say that, Christians have got to go and take it up with them and say, right, you're making a claim that you can't prove. I can't prove my claim. So we're both in the business of making claims that we can't support. So what are we going to do? And well, I don't know what they're going to do, but I'm not one of those people. So it's not my problem. Okay. So there we are. Yeah, switching the burden of proof. And then he finally came around to Bayesian analysis of fine tuning. And there was a bit of sort of unpleasant ending to the call. Matt saying we've got no priors, so Bayesian analysis can't possibly apply to the supposed fine tuning of the universe, because we've got no priors, we've got no data set in order to arrive at statistics and probabilities. So Bayesian analysis can't really be applied to the universe. You can make models, but they're not really. You shouldn't put much weight in them because we've got no priors. Yeah. Okay. So that was. That ended up with the Christian saying, "Well, God bless you, God loves you." And Matt said, fuck you," and he said, if you're going to say your version of "fuck you," I'm going to say my version of "fuck you" as well. Fair enough. Yep. And it seems to me that when Christians do come on at the end of a call when they've been completely humiliated, they sign off with, "Well, God bless you," and it does sort of sound like, "Well, fuck you," fuck you, atheists. All right. Okay, so Arn called in with this strange claim that The term he's an atheist. The term atheist is imposed on us, and he doesn't like it. Well, well, I don't mind it. I don't mind if people. I've had people claim I'm not an atheist when I say that I don't know if there's a God or not. There may be a God. Yeah, absolutely. There may be a God, and I might be wrong. There may well indeed be a God. And then people have said to me, "Oh, well, you're not an atheist then. You're an agnostic." Look, you can call me whatever you want. I don't care. Look, I don't believe in God, right? You can call me an atheist. You can call me an agnostic. You can call me a non-theist. I don't care what you call me. But whatever you want to call me, I don't believe in any God, right? Okay. So I don't really think the term atheist is a problem. Whether people say that I'm an atheist or not, I've got no objection to it, and I've got no objection if people deny that I'm an atheist and say that I'm an agnostic. I don't care. I don't believe in God, and that's the main thing. Okay, and Matt didn't care either. He shut the call down fairly quickly. Okay, let's see. What else have we got? Excuse me a moment while I have a look. Okay, yes. So I attended yet another church service in Great Britain. I attended a church service. There were about 300 present. And I listened to the sermon. Yeah, the sermon. Now, at the start of this service, children are invited to come to the altar. No, they're not going to be sacrificed. Don't worry. And nothing else bad is going to happen to them. No, they came to the front and the minister played a game with them. He put a sort of a target like a dartboard, or, like a target, like a sort of archery target on the floor. And then he put a line down and he provided some, I don't know, some objects which could be thrown at this target. And he invited the children to try and throw it at the target. And they tried and they tried. They missed, but they kept trying. And eventually they succeeded in getting closer to the target. Okay. So you're supposed to keep that in your memory because there's a moral to this. And I thought, what's the meaning behind this? Okay. What exactly is he getting at? Because usually the game that's played with children at the beginning of the service um, has got some kind of Christian point to it. So sure enough, the sermon came around, and my ears were wide open for this sermon. And the church not only in Great Britain, but in America and Europe, of course, and other parts of the world, but not the third world, not the developing world. Yeah, so in Scandinavia, church attendances are plummeting. They're having to close churches down because they're too expensive to run. And we've got the same problem here in the UK. Well, for me, it's not a problem. It's a reason to rejoice. But there is this problem that unless they fill the churches up, they can't get the collections in, and they can't sustain the church, and they can't pay a minister. So then you've got two churches merging, then you've got three churches merging, and so the established churches in the UK, Church of England, Church of Scotland, they are shrinking all the time. Churches are closing down all the time. They're getting desperate. They're getting desperate because the Bible story about when Jesus went to the Lake of Galilee and he saw the apostles in a fishing boat and they recognized him. They looked miserable. I think this is how the story goes. And they explained they caught no fish. And Jesus said, okay, cast your net over the other side. And lo and behold, they pulled in a big net of fish. And then Jesus said, come and follow me and be fishers of men. Okay. We all know the story. It's quite a cool story, I must say. I like it. It's a cool story. I don't believe that Jesus is a savior, and I don't believe there's any God, but credit due where credit is due. It's a cool story, and there are lots of cool stories in the Bible. So the point is, the context that church attendances are falling. There are not enough. There are not enough fish, and there are not enough fishermen. There are not enough fishermen. So the point is that everybody everybody in the Christian church has got to become a fisher of men and women, of course, or just people. Let's just say people. And so we're being urged to invite people, casually invite, come along to the coffee morning at the church hall. Maybe you'll come along to the service, and it's quite nice. We'll sing a few hymns, etc. There's coffee and biscuits afterwards. And if they say no, it's no big deal. But maybe try again. And this is where the game that the children played earlier, where they had to keep trying. Eventually, they hit the target. And the minister said, and if you keep trying, maybe you'll hit the target. Maybe somebody will come, and then maybe they will discover the love of Jesus, so that Jesus can walk not only with you, but Jesus can walk with them as well. And what a big favor you'll be doing them. So yeah, that was the sermon, and that was the game. But it just shows how desperate that the church is getting, because attendances are dropping very, very sharply. All right, so let me see. What have we got next? Okay, yes. Last week, I forgot to talk about some of the TED Talks I've watched on conspiracy theories, conspiracy theorists, and what to do with them. So I saw different types of talks. There was one talk that was very hostile to conspiracy theorists, that if you're faced with a science denier, um, somebody who's denying basic facts, then the only reasonable course of action is to rebut to rebut the claim that's being made, to question it, and to counter it. If you know that, I mean, for example, if somebody makes the claim that the MMR vaccine causes autism, you can either let that go, or you can rebut it. For example, I know about that particular case. I know there was a study that was subsequently discredited, and the world of science is fairly unanimous that there's no proven link between the MMR vaccine and autism. Now, of course, your average conspiracy will say, oh, well, of course they discredited the study. What do you expect them to do? Of course, when it came out, they lined up some experts, handpicked, and they discredited it. Of course they did. Take your blinkers off, Stuart. You can see what they're trying to do. It's a red herring, old boy. Yeah, well, that's the problem, isn't it? That whatever you say to a conspiracy theorist, they will just say that what you base your why have you got confidence in the narrative that you're telling me? Hasn't it occurred to you that the elite, that the people who pull the strings, have created that narrative for blinkered people like you? Well, you know something, uh, in that kind of situation, I suppose what you've got to say there is, look, I've got a choice. I can either go with experts, or I can go with random people like you with no medical expertise. So, I trust medical science on the whole. On the whole, I've got high confidence in it. And I'd rather go with those experts than go with amateurs who've just done reading on the dark web, or something like that, or conspiracy theory websites. So I'm sorry, but you're making a big claim there that there's a big conspiracy over this. In order for me to believe it, I'll need some evidence and not just claims. Okay, so yeah, so to rebut, and I kind of agree with that. Yeah, I would say that rebutting is the best way forward. Now, there wasn't there was somebody else. There was another, I think, doctor of psychology or something. I can't remember, but she said that the way to she said that the way to get through to them is to empathize and sympathize with the grander point that, yeah, it's it's a bit sort of, you feel sort of vulnerable and frustrated when um it might be the case that you're kept in the dark by the authorities about something, that maybe there's some information out there that you haven't got, that if only you could know, it could help you. It's really frustrating that we lack the control that we would like to have over our lives. Yeah, I get that absolutely. Yeah, so to talk to a conspiracy theorist like that, will say, yes, I agree with you. There's so much that we don't know, and it's frustrating. And sometimes, yeah, you do feel vulnerable about it. So yeah, you can. Her point was that you can find a common ground. So without validating their claims, you can at least say, well, yes, I see your point that there might be something going on there, and yeah, that does seem strange. Now, my personal problem with that is that if you don't directly address the claim and you kind of generalize and sympathize with their position in any way whatsoever, you'll only encourage them to get deeper into the delusions or false belief that they already possess. It would be better to demonstrate some skepticism. If you demonstrate some healthy skepticism on it without ruling it out, say, well, you know something, what you've said may well be the case, but has it been confirmed? And they'll say, well, this is what's being claimed. And you say, well, yes, but claims aren't the same as facts, are they? And they'll say, well, yes, but it seems strange that I say, yeah, it does seem strange, doesn't it? But really, unless you've got some way of confirming this, I'll have to be neutral on that question. But yeah, I take your point. And, that's the kind of gentle way that you could do it without without making a conspiracy theorist feel stupid. Now, there's no danger there's no danger of most conspiracy theorists feeling stupid, because, as somebody else pointed out in one of the other talks, one of the reasons that conspiracy theories are so popular, and one reason why it's very difficult to convince a conspiracy theorist that they're wrong, is that they like to believe that they've got the inside track, that they've got information and knowledge that you haven't got, that people at the sheep on the whole are not in the know, but the conspiracy theorist is. He's done the research, and he's the smart guy, and we're all just sheep going around blinkered, doing exactly what we're told. And conspiracy theorists get a lot of prestige and self-esteem out of this. So it's going to be very difficult to insult a conspiracy theorist. In my experience, they're actually quite hard-skinned. So, um, however, there are some who are just sort of. I mean, there are hardcore conspiracy theorists, yeah, who believe a lot of them. Because they don't just believe one; they believe loads of them. So there are those conspiracy theorists. Then there are others who are sort of sympathetic to this idea that there are um, groups of people who, in secret, are hatching um, or plotting in a sinister way against the population at large. There are people who are sympathetic to this, but they probably don't believe the Earth is flat. They probably do believe that we really went to the moon. Um, they might believe that Flight 93 was shot down, and the hero story was just a kind of coping mechanism of trying to um, get something out of the carnage and the defeat of that horrible day. So they may sort of believe in some of them, but not all of them. But a hardcore conspiracy theorist will believe the Earth is flat, moon landings didn't happen, QAnon, the Great Reset, uh, Diana was killed by the royal family. I mean, the whole lot, chemtrails, everything. Just like this friend of mine, you know, I mean, he believes that I can't think of I mean, water fluoridation, all of it, all of the conspiracy theories that there's an extra sun. There's a sun, apparently, there's a second sun in the solar system, and it's hiding behind the real sun. And the reason we never see it, excuse me, I'm just going to I'm just going to make sure that I don't run out of power. Okay, sorry, just plugged in. Um, yeah. So yeah, there are new sort of ideas popping up all the time that I didn't know about. I didn't know there was a new theory that there's a second sun in the solar system, and the reason we can't see it is basically because of the way that the Earth is tracking around the orbit, and the way that the second sun is fortunately hiding behind the sun, or the real sun, all the time, and we can't see it. And of course, why is it that when we send out space probes uh, that take photographs and send them back to Earth of the solar system and indeed the sun from different vantage points, we never see the second sun? And if you put that to a conspiracy theorist, they'll say, don't be stupid. Don't be naive. Do you think they would release the photographs where the second sun is visible? And then if you say, well, actually, yes, they would. You say, well, no, of course they wouldn't. Well, why wouldn't they? Because it seems that if we all found out that there was a second sun, um, it would freak us out. The economy would collapse. We wouldn't pay our bills. We wouldn't pay our mortgages. We wouldn't go out to eat in restaurants. We wouldn't spend money. The world economy would collapse. The elite would suffer. So, yeah, they're keeping all this hidden from us. Great. Well, you would think that at least one of them, at least one of those multi-billionaires, Elon Musk or somebody like that, that when they die, they might leave a little note behind saying, look, I feel a bit guilty about all this. I've been involved with the Illuminati and the rest. I want to free the human race from its delusions. Um, this is what's going on. There are reptilian aliens who are pulling all the strings. This is true, and I can prove it. And if you go to a certain place, you'll find the spacecraft or something like that. I don't know. But you would think that somebody would have left some word behind, or maybe one of those who worked on the moon program, who hasn't got any family that can be bumped off, who, like a lone wolf, somebody who's got no family, mom and dad all dead, friends all dead. There's nobody left to be killed by the CIA, to be afraid, and they can leave a note behind saying, "Yeah, okay, it really was a hoax. I worked on the moon program, the Apollo program, and I was just sitting playing solitaire all day, and I was being paid $50,000 a year for that. And no, there was no moon landing, and this is how they did it." You would think that out of the 200,000 people that worked on the moon program, all the people who've died, somebody would have left behind a note to say that, yeah, it was all a hoax. But no, absolutely nothing. Okay, I must admit, I should probably start a sort of conspiracy theorist um, news channel. I don't know, some kind of channel which is a bit like the channel that I've got, but more about tracking conspiracy theorists and uh, what they're saying, and the anti-conspiracy theorist movement. I should probably get into that because I'm quite sort of interested in it. Okay, so we've got PowerPoint Game saying sometimes discussions with conspiracy theorists on national TV can help them make fools of themselves to a big audience. um, well, on Good Morning Britain, or one of the uh, British television, breakfast TV, as we call it. I can't remember which one it was, but they they had a moon landing hoaxer and a flat earther on the breakfast TV, and the two hosts just sat there open mouthed as he said, "Yeah, the Earth is flat and there was no moon landing," or anything like that. And unfortunately, they didn't really have anybody there to rebut him, and they didn't really know what to say to him, because conspiracy theorists are often know a lot more, or at least they've got a lot of arguments which are easily shot down by people who know what they're talking about. But Joe Public out there, most people don't know how to, for example, they can't give, say, 5 good reasons why the Earth is a globe. They can't rebut the claim that the Earth is flat. Most people can't do that. And if flat earthers say, well, look, the Earth looks flat, doesn't it? I mean, that's what we see. And you've never seen the Earth from space, have you? You've never seen that it's a globe. All you've seen is photographs. I mean, they could be faked. I mean, if you put these points to people as a flat earther, 99% of people out there wouldn't be able to rebut you. They say, oh, dear me, maybe the Earth's flat after all. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, conspiracy theorists. Let me see. Yeah. So there was the empathize with conspiracy theorists, and rebut them. So which one to do? Yeah, I rather go for rebutting. I think it's dangerous to empathize with conspiracy theorists because I wouldn't want to validate any conspiracy theorists' delusion, as I would call it, because I think that a lot of the information is coming from sources which really they shouldn't be putting any weight upon. Right. Let me see. What else have I got? Yeah, conspiracy theorists. Well, of course, they've had the flat earthers out to Antarctica, and it hasn't stopped the arguments because they got out there and found there's a 24-hour sun. It's daylight all the time, and in a flat Earth model, it shouldn't be. And all that's happened is that all the conspiracy theorists who wouldn't go to the Antarctica and who stayed at home said, "Oh, well, that's a hoax as well." They faked it somehow. Yeah. Right. Let's see. What else have we got? Okay, let me have a look at some of your comments because I think I've just about run out here. What's going on? Greeks measured the circumference of the Earth in 300 BC with sticks and shadows. Clever people, those Greeks, weren't they? Very clever. Neil deGrasse Tyson said it would cost more to fake a moon landing. Well, if you think about all the hundreds of hours of footage that they've got, film, it was broadcast live on TV at the time. Yeah, it would take quite some doing to fake it. I mean, there were people there who saw the Saturn V lift off. And it's just, yeah, probably would cost more. Well, I don't know if it would cost more because I think it remains the single most expensive project in the history of human endeavor. The cost, I think that the cost in today's money, I believe the cost in US money in the 60s was something like $400 billion, which in today's money, I don't know, it must be trillions. It was an absolutely incredibly expensive trip. Let's see. Dragon King says, just got here. What's your position on the burden of proof for atheists? Well, the burden of proof I'm not really too sure what you mean by that. If you mean that, what burden of proof should an atheist have? I'm not too sure what you mean by that because, for example, as an atheist, I'm just saying that I don't subscribe to the claim that a God exists. I'm not sure what burden of proof I would need for that. I suppose if you mean what's my justification for that, my justification would be that I haven't been convinced because I haven't been presented with convincing evidence. So I don't really know what else to say about that. Let's see, what else have we got? Dyslexia Jones says, I've been having a great time watching Deconstruction Zone, Justin's knowledge of all thing Bible. Who's that? Is that Justin Brierley? I don't know. Oh, no, it's not. Somebody somebody very kindly put me on to somebody else with an atheist channel out there who seems to be doing very well. He's got, I don't know, he put out a video recently, and in just a few days he has something like 200,000 views. Absolutely incredible. And he's got other, I think he does live streams where, maybe I should do this, maybe, I don't know. He's got live streams where people can interact with him by voice and have a discussion. So I think that's pretty good. I think that their face pops up whether he uses Zoom or something like that to do it, and he seems to be quite popular. He seems to be getting a lot of traffic, and it's good to see. It's good to see other atheist channels other than the line pulling in the traffic, because we need a good range of people in this field. Let's see. So Marcy says, I get it, but can at least pretend there's a God. Flat Earth. Well, yeah, we can pretend there's a God, but yeah, I mean, we could pretend the Earth is flat as well. And I think that maybe a lot of flat earthers out there pretend that the Earth is flat because they enjoy the community. And I've seen Christians enjoy Christian community, and maybe a lot of those pretend that there's a God. And who knows, with flat earthers, you've seen the flat Earth. I've seen film from the Flat Earth Convention. They seem to be having a great time. They seem to. It's just a shame that in order to have a great time, they've got to believe something which is factually proven to be untrue. But okay, that's the thing with religion. That's the thing with God. We can't prove that it's untrue. And a lot of Christians have got the position that, well, I'm going to go on believing it until you can prove that it's untrue. And of course, we never will prove that it's untrue. So consequently, you end up believing until the day you die. I mean, in that sense, it's a fairly safe. If that's going to be your epistemological standard, that you're going to believe something until it's proven untrue, then you're in quite a secure position as a Christian, as a believer, because nobody's ever going to prove your belief untrue. So that's fine. But for me, in order to believe something, I don't switch the burden of proof. It's got to be proven true in order for me to believe it, not the other way around. Okay, Dragon King, I see, depends on how you define atheism. In philosophy, for the usual definition, there would be a burden of proof involved. Well, yeah, and I mean, every position has got some burden of proof. I accept that, and I've said what my justification is for my position, that I don't subscribe to a belief in God, and it's the same as me not subscribing to a belief that the Loch Ness monster exists, or me not subscribing to a belief that fairies exist. So my justification for me not believing in those other things is, again, it hasn't been confirmed that they exist, and I can't really do better than that as a burden of proof. I'm not making a positive claim that there's an entity out there. That's the thing. All I'm saying is I don't subscribe to the claim that that entity is out there. So you could say that atheism has got some burden of proof, but I think it's got less of a burden of proof than those who are actually claiming that the thing is there, because I'm not claiming that the thing isn't there. I'm just saying you've not convinced me yet that it is there. There's not a subtle difference. I think there's an obvious difference. Okay, PowerPoint Game says, if you have a positive claim that no gods exist, then you have a burden of proof. If you are simply not convinced, then you might need a lie detector test to prove that you don't believe. Well, I mean, lie detectors, I don't believe that they're actually. I think the science on lie detectors hasn't really been confirmed. I believe that in a court of law, you can't submit lie detector evidence, because there are people who are very good at lying who can fool a lie detector, and there are people who are terrible at telling the truth and really nervous, and it doesn't really work there either. So I suppose that, yeah, that's a good point. I mean, if I say that I don't believe in a God, how do you know I'm telling the truth? Yeah, I can't. I can't prove to you that I'm telling the truth. Absolutely. In the same way, you can't prove to me that you're telling the truth when you say that you do believe in a God. And in fact, there are people who say they believe when they don't really believe. So yeah, it's a bit of a problem, but it's not a it's not an extraordinary claim for me to say that I don't believe in a God. And what I'm really interested in are people who make extraordinary claims, whether it be God, aliens, um, Bigfoot or the Bermuda Triangle, the supernatural, anything like that. I'm not interested in mundane claims like somebody saying, I don't believe in Santa Claus. Prove it. Prove that claim. What claim? The claim that you don't believe in Santa Claus. Prove it. No, it's a waste of time. There's no necessity to prove mundane claims. Okay, let's see. Yeah, I mean, why is there no necessity? Because mundane claims don't violate any sort of laws of physics. Um, uh, they're very commonplace and generally speaking, easy to prove. Although I admit that in the case of somebody stating a belief, it's probably impossible to prove whether they're telling the truth or not. But still, I think it's a mundane claim. Um, let's see. Uh, all right. Okay. Let's see. Um, God equals the square root of -1. What's that? Is that a username? Okay. People that insist the atheists have a burden of proof is infantile and just trying to shift the burden. I think that it's not very okay. I mean, there's been somebody on my channel who, yeah, left a comment, not to me, just generally putting it out there that if atheism is the default position, as atheists claim that it's the default position until such a time as sufficient evidence has been presented to support the existence of God. It's the default position, but there are, as he claimed, hundreds of atheist worldviews. Well, actually, no, there are not hundreds of it. I mean, look, atheism is one thing, and then there are worldviews. So there's atheism, the position that I'm not subscribing to belief in a God. That's one thing. And then there are worldviews. For example, Marxist worldview, um, uh, liberal worldview, and humanitarian, humanist worldview. So, I mean, there are worldviews, and then there's atheism. So it's not really like atheism can be said to be default position. I wouldn't personally claim that. I don't like making these claims saying, "Oh, atheist is a default position," because then you've kind of got a burden of proof to prove that. And I suppose that I could justify it, but I don't really think it's very fruitful. And I don't think it's fruitful for theists to come onto atheist channels and instead of supporting their own beliefs with arguments and evidence, to start criticizing atheists and to say, well, prove that you're an atheist or prove that atheism's true or why haven't you got the burden of proof? It's not very fruitful because what we're really looking for as atheists is evidence that's going to convince us that we're wrong. And if I was proven wrong, of course I would become a theist overnight. Absolutely. But I don't think that really it's very fruitful for theists to try and claim that atheists have got any burden of proof, because we're not claiming that there's an entity out there, and we're not claiming that there's no entity out there, a supernatural, all-powerful creator. So, I mean, it would be absurd for somebody who was an ardent believer in the Loch Ness monster that, yeah, Nessie is down there for sure. And I'm saying, well, I don't believe that. And then switching the burden of proof on me and saying, well, how do you know he's not down there? Can you prove that Nessie's not down there? I mean, it's not very it's not very productive. It would be far more productive because we're not really playing chess here. We're trying to we're trying to establish whether the single most important claim in the history of humankind is actually true. And rather than playing chess and playing these silly games like switching the burden of proof, let's really have proper discussions and, at least talk about some of the arguments out there and any of the evidence. Let's talk about those things rather than sort of dishonestly trying to switch the burden of proof, taking the heat off you when you're making the claim that there's something that exists. So there we are. Let's see any more interesting comments. Marcy says, I certainly think it's highly unlikely that there's some supreme being pulling the strings, but I certainly can't and have interest in trying to prove it. I really think, or not I really think, but you know, looking at the world and what we know about the universe, it seems to be consistent with a universe or an existence in which there is no God. When I look around me, when I look at all the suffering, and when I look at how long it's taken for man to eventually arrive on the planet or for life to get started on Earth, that there were 200 million years when these great big huge lizard-like animals, dinosaurs, were roaming the Earth, and um, or that we only had microbial life for the first 100 million years. I mean, it looks to me like sort of it doesn't look to me like a sort of God guided universe, and especially with all the suffering, as Alex O'Connor has pointed out very well. Well, you could claim that human beings have got to suffer because we've got more sort of, I suppose, volition and sort of freedom of will, I suppose, in some sense. Um, we can reason, and if human beings are special, etc., then uh, it's understandable that real actions have got real consequences and that there has to be suffering. Otherwise, there can't really be sin and there can't really be virtue, and there'd be no means then of salvation, going to heaven. And it all fits in the Christian narrative. Suffering is all part of the Christian now. Yeah, I mean, I can kind of accept that, but as Alex O'Connor says, that animals, I saw a video on Facebook. I don't know, maybe you guys are seeing these videos too, where animals are tearing each other apart. And I saw one the other day where two lions, male lions, were tearing apart a rival male lion that was still alive, and they were eating its guts out. And I mean, that lion that was being torn apart was roaring at them. It was still alive. It must have been in absolute agony. Okay, human beings deserve to suffer. I mean, we were born with sin. Maybe I can I can almost grasp all that, but why should animals, blameless animals, why should they also suffer these absolutely appalling, excruciating deaths? Good point. I've never heard that one before. I don't know where. I'm sure that Alex O'Connor is not the origin of that argument, but I think it's a very, very strong point. By all means, human beings, let us suffer um, so that we can overcome that suffering, and through virtue and through salvation, get into heaven. Fine. What about all those poor animals? Why should they suffer? Doesn't really make any sense. That's why I say that we live in a universe that seems to be consistent with there being no God, and it doesn't make any sense that there are so many children sitting in cancer wards. I mean, that doesn't really seem to be justified in any way. Now, I know a lot of Christians will say, well, good, let them die of cancer. The sooner the better, because then they'll be in paradise with Jesus. Okay, well, you try telling the parents that. You try going into a cancer ward and patting a grieving parent on the back and saying, don't worry, he's with Jesus now. See what they'll say. Okay. Um, Right. Okay. Okay. Well, look, my throat is getting sore. It's late. It's absolutely freezing here. And my flat that I live in, or my apartment if you're American, it's one of these stupid British flats here where the ceiling is exceptionally tall. It's like 3.5 meters. I've got ceiling which is 3.5 meters. And you know what that means? It means that I need to generate a lot of heat in this room because heat rises, right? Oh, yeah. And why does heat rise? Well, because of course God made it that way. Well, I mean, if God knew that human beings were going to make rooms 3.5 meters tall, maybe God would have made heat not rise, but stay at the level that human beings are, so that we can keep warm. Yeah, so it's quite cold here, and I don't have very good heating facilities. So okay, don't move into an apartment with tall ceilings. Honestly, I mean, I like my flat. Apart from that, I'm looking forward to the spring for when the weather finally breaks and we get some mild weather. Okay, Dragon King is talking to Marcy. Oh, I see. Yeah, I'm sorry that I'm going to sign off in a moment because there seemed to be a good conversation going. Um, I'll probably, if I can just think of something to say in the last few moments. Come on, something about religion. I don't know. You know, just to say the other thing about Christianity, which I don't understand, is that not that I don't understand, but which it seems makes Christianity highly unlikely as a religion to be true, is that it preaches that salvation. Well, first of all human beings are stained by original sin, right? Including the Eskimos, including those living in remote regions, including the Sinhalese in the I can't remember where they are. They're a tiny island where illiterate people live. Uh, they know nothing of Jesus there. A young man went to them trying to give them the Bible and spread the word of Jesus, and they shot him with an arrow and killed him. No, so they don't know anything about Jesus. What happens to them when they die? I mean, if Christianity is true, do they get a free pass because they never had the option, or are they sent back for another go around and born into a Christian country? It doesn't really make much sense, does it, that only those who live in Christian countries, more or less, or at least where communications are good and people can get to know about Christianity. And the other thing is that I asked an old woman once about heaven, a Christian woman. I said, "What do you imagine you do in heaven?" She says, "Well, I don't really know." And I said, "What do you think heaven's like?" She said, "Well, I don't know. I just know it's a very happy place." Now, fair enough. It's a good enough answer for me. I don't mind that. But I doubt very much that it could be a very happy place because if you can imagine, if you're a Christian and you've got, shall we say, an atheist child, say a son who is an atheist, and according to your doctrine, that your son, when he dies, will not be saved, will suffer eternal separation from God and be in misery for the rest of eternity. How could you sit in heaven uh, with all the other believers happy? How could it be a happy place if your son is suffering for all eternity? Doesn't really make any sense, does it? How could heaven be a happy place unless they give you some kind of happy wafer as you go through, and it makes you forget about all your relatives? I don't know. Um, right. Well, I'm going to leave chat open. So, I mean, for a little while, I don't know whether I sign off, whether chat keeps going, but I appreciate. Thank you very much to everybody who's tuned in. I've been going for about an hour now, so I'm going to go offline and probably go to bed. Thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this live stream. Bye for now. Good night.